Okay, so now Crosscheck has gone from looking for fraudulent voters to evidence of a move. And see, they're very smart, because under the Supreme Court ruling, evidence you've moved can trigger a postcard. And the truth is that they use there's two lists, there's Crosscheck and there's Eric. If they use the Eric list, I wouldn't be here, because, I agree with you, why are you removing people? What's the danger? But the Eric list, no one is accused of being inaccurate and racist. This is not just a bit inaccurate, this is completely, this list, for example, these 20 names, not a single pair of people have the same middle names, not one single match. I didn't edit this at all. This is straight off the list. This is a screenshot. Every single person named Jones is matched with someone with a different middle name. But it's now that they've moved. And that's why, that's the game. And so he says, oh, we don't use list maintenance. So, it would be lovely to have two things. One, Stacey Abrams did, when she looked at the list, she found something I haven't found. That some of the people who are properly matched, like there are names that are unusual. Ense Ufot, for example. If there's an Ense Ufot on that list, it would show 2 registrations from 2 states. But what she noticed is that the registrations, in many cases, in half the cases, were people with later registrations in Georgia. Now, they moved into Georgia, they didn't move out of Georgia, and Kemp is ignoring the fact that half those people moved into Georgia, not out of Georgia. And that was actually caught by Stacey Abrams. Yes. I love her comment on this. I'm asking Kemp's comment, so I'd be happy to get her comment.
Thanks.
And I think that might be helpful to get people to notice that this is going on. And Reverend Jackson will be here tomorrow. So he's my...
AME Church?
I assume so. He's going to be...
is it Reginald Jackson?
No, Jesse Jackson.
Oh.
Sorry.
I mean, listen, Jackson is a popular name. Hence,
Jackson.
It's a popular name.
He's on the voter. He's on the Purged List.
Jacksons.
And that's why he is my co-plaintiff in Illinois, where he votes in Chicago.
Very good. Okay.
And there, the legislature ordered the state to get out of the program. However, the Republican governor vetoed it.
Bruce
Rayner, yeah, nasty piece of work.
Yeah.
But so I hope you get your people to start looking at our New Georgia project, to start looking at, see if they're missing.
Absolutely. So what we've done is we've launched a website called areyouactive.org. And it's just easy step-by-step way for Georgians to determine whether or not they've been purged and they're on the voter rolls. We've also launched a sort of kind of funny, cute digital ad campaign called I Survived the Purge. And the idea is that we want to sort of build a culture of civic engagement and a culture of sort of, active civic engagement. So we want to build a community around being a voter. And so I Survived the Purge is basically someone who's checked their status to make sure that they're an active Georgia voter. And that if they are active as a voter, then they'll get active in making sure that their friends and family haven't been purged, or active in volunteering with the New Georgia Project in tons of other ways in the lead up to this November's elections, but also in the days afterwards, because we're really focused on building some independent political power for people of color in the state of Georgia.
Let me ask you, you were in Canada. You came out of Canada, right? You worked.
Well, I was born in Nigeria and raised in Southwest Atlanta, so I've been here most of my life.
Well, the reason I asked you about Canada, do you have but you did work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah, you were a lawyer in Canada.
I worked for the chief of staff for the Canadian Association of University Teachers.
Do they play these voter? Do you have the Georgia voter games being played in Canada?
No, not at all. Not at all. This is unique. To I think America and some southern states, but I also think that in Georgia in particular, they see the writing on the wall. They're looking at the same demographic information that we're looking at, the same census data that we're looking at. They're seeing women and people of color and young people sort of getting active and participating and challenging authority, and people see the loss of power and they're threatened by it. And so we see very, very aggressive, desperate attempts to hold on to power. Georgia would be the first state in the Deep South with a white minority. And so the pale, male, stale minority in Georgia who currently has an outsized influence on our policy and our politics will have to contend with a truly multi-generational, multi-ethnic, multiracial Georgia. And some people are not excited about it. And so a lot of what we see, a lot of these suppression attempts, we believe are a backlash or an attempt to sort of get out ahead of the changes that are happening in Georgia, across the South, and in the U.S.
Do you think Brian Kemp could win if he didn't have, would he stand a chance if he didn't use these vote suppression techniques?
Well, let me first say that Brian Kemp is the current Secretary of State of Georgia who has refused to resign in his bid for governor. So he's running for governor this November and will be responsible for maintaining and assuring the integrity of an election in which he's a candidate at the top of the ticket. That's an inherent, like blatant conflict of interest, and it's super problematic. So even if all of these voter suppression attempts were not successful, right? Being responsible for certifying an election in which you're a candidate could certainly guarantee someone's success.
Well, let me mention, Brian Kemp's crony, who worked with him on Crosscheck, Chris Kobach of Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
He was Secretary of State also during his own bid for governor, and it looked like he lost the election, but then, as Secretary of State, he disqualified thousands of provisional ballots. He disqualified thousands of absentee ballots based on supposed wrong signatures. He was able to decide which ballots get counted and which don't. Is that gonna be a problem?
It most certainly is going to be a problem if he doesn't recuse himself. And again, he hasn't. He's refused to step down. And the people of Georgia have made that demand of him in several ways. So that's what I mean when I talk about finding and hiring elected officials who are who know what the priorities of Georgia's are and who are responsive to those priorities, who listen to the people, and firing elected officials who don't.
Well, okay, what are some of the things that Kemp could do as Secretary of State in the vote count or in determining, any of the things, number of voting stations, anything else? What can he do as Secretary of State to bend this election if he decides to bend the election?
Well, a lot of that work has already been done. So again, our machines are 18 years old, our voting machines. The voting machines in Georgia are old enough to vote themselves. They run on Windows 2000 software, and Microsoft no longer provides support for them. They've been hacked multiple times in the previous election cycles. The results of the special election in the Georgia 6th Congressional District were housed on a server at Kennesaw State University, and that server was wiped completely clean. So the results of that election don't exist anymore. The overuse of provisional ballots. So there are eligible voters who could be given provisional ballots, and provisional ballots aren't counted until you come back and fix whatever issue there was. So that means that people have to go back between Tuesday and Friday to cure whatever issue, prove their identity, bring ID, answer questions, etc. Not likely. Their votes could be not counted. Votes could be improperly counted. And again, the appearance of impropriety, in addition to actual impropriety, is really problematic.
Yeah, you said something about exact signature rule. That's a Kemp rule, the exact signature rule in Georgia. What is that? And how does that affect the selection?
I didn't say anything about exact signature rule.
Okay. Oh, I thought that someone else had mentioned that.
Okay.
That Kemp, though, could challenge someone's signature on an absentee ballot, because we saw that in Kansas. Would he have the right as Secretary of State to set the rules on challenging signatures?
Yes, he does, and that would be a problem. So there are as many ways as there are to challenge a vote or a voter. I suspect that we will see it in this November's elections.
Now, you mentioned provisional ballots. Can you explain to people what a provisional ballot is?
Right.
And especially people listening in other countries say, like, what is a provisional ballot?
So there are two types of ballots that voters can vote on election day, on election day. So there's a regular ballot, which is the ballot that everyone gets. You vote, and it gets counted the night of the election. And then there are provisional ballots. And provisional ballots say, there's a question about your eligibility to vote, but we're not gonna send you home because voting is way too important. So you'll vote this special ballot until we determine that you're actually eligible to vote. Or you come back and like fix whatever the deficiency is.
500,000 Georgians scrubbed just this past year in 17.
Mm-hmm.
If they're scrubbed off the voter rolls for whether that was correct or incorrect,
Mm-hmm.
and they're given a provisional ballot, does that ballot get counted?
Not immediately. So they have until the Friday of election week to come back and prove that they're an eligible